All right, so where was I? Accomplished that piece of my list of things to do today. Now I'm on to the next thing. Anyway, okay, so I was talking about all these various ideas that are variations on a theme, and that theme is a kind of dualism. But it's a kind of dualism that is rooted in deceit, okay, and manipulation and exploitation and oppression, right? So I listed some dualistic ideas. I listed the Overton Window. Most people would probably hear the phrase Overton Window and not think of dualism. Because Overton Window is more about a spectrum, at least on the surface. But ultimately, I believe at the bottom, at the root level of the idea, there is a dualism. Because you have the Overton Window is about an extreme, the extremes of acceptable social norms. On the one side, you have the acceptable good, okay? So, and on the other side, you have the acceptable bad. And I'll resist the temptation to digress and give examples, but just leave it at the abstract level for now. So, if that doesn't make any sense, I understand why. That it doesn't make any. I understand you really need some examples if you're not already familiar with the idea. But I'll not do that right now because this is going to be too long to begin with. I can tell that, right? I can already tell. So the Overton Window is one of the dualistic variations. The Hegelian Dialectic is another variation, crisis solution paradigm. The checkerboard pattern. This is kind of a symbolic thing, but it does apply. Okay, so we go from real world to symbolic. Okay, the dual-headed phoenix of the Roman Empire. I don't have a lot of background on that. I don't know a lot about it, and I've only heard about it in a cursory fashion from one source. So it may not even be a real historical fact, but I believe. At this point in time, I have no reason to doubt that it is. So there's a dual-headed phoenix of the Roman Empire. It was part of their, adorning symbology. Excuse me. You have the Hermetic ancient teaching that is pretty well known these days. I mean, there was a movie called "As It Is Above, So It Is Below," or "As Above, So Below," something along those lines. And the setting were the French catacombs, and it was all about this type of thing. It was all about the occult, and it was categorized, I think, as a horror movie, but it was a lot of philosophy in there. So it was a pretty good movie if you could appreciate the philosophy. I mean, I don't like horror movies, so from that aspect of the movie really held no interest to me. But the philosophical aspects of it, I thought were pretty interesting. It touched on the idea of gravity versus electromagnetic or magnetic electric attraction as well. So I thought that part of it was very interesting. And it was inadvertent. It wasn't a point they were trying to make. It was just something that happened, and I don't even think necessarily they intended for it to happen. So, and my car smells like gas. I don't know why that is, but it's extremely annoying. What the heck that's all about? I'm trying to figure this out. Anyway, did I spill something in here somewhere? Did I buy something? Some liquid and spilled it? Anyway, so Okay, like I said, I don't really have this together yet. It's like, it's still hurting my brain. But I've also been thinking about it too long. I need to make an expression of what I know, so I can hopefully go to the next level. So ultimately, there's also the yin and the yang. Obviously, I mean that's like the most obvious, example of dualism. But I'm not 100% sure that applies. I don't think the yin and the yang is a tool of deceit and manipulation and exploitation. I think that's just a philosophical construct. So even though it is a very explicitly dualistic in nature, I don't think it applies to what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is, really what we're talking about here is the science of power. This is how power spreads. This is how power, it's basically the science of power, but it's illicit power. It's not legitimate godly power. It's illegitimate ungodly power, So this is basically what we're talking about here. And what this is really all about is a real versus a counterfeit. Okay? And the acclamation of the players, okay? The players in the positions of power. The acclamation of the players to morph from one to the other. It's like as gracefully and as seamlessly as moving from a black square to a white square in that symbolic design that is in the Vatican, is in the Freemason, whatever it's called, Temple, Bethel, whatever, over in England, and I guess a lot of Freemason artwork. The twin-headed phoenix of the Roman Empire, as it is above, so it is below, the crisis solution paradigm. See, in every case in this dualistic approach to the acquisition of illicit power, right? There is, like as in the head of the phoenix, there's a legitimate phoenix and there's an illegitimate. In other words, there's a representation of good and a representation of evil, and they're very difficult to tell apart. Like with the checkerboard pattern, the two squares are exactly the same in every way, except for obviously the color, right? And you could make the observation, I think, with some meaning that that color is simply a vibration. It's a frequency, it's a frequency of light. So with the crisis solution paradigm, right, you have people providing a real solution to a real crisis, right? And the solution that they're providing is real. It is truly benevolent. There's no question about that. The crisis was real. So where's the good and where's the evil? Well, in this dualism, it's all evil. Both sides are evil. The twin head of the phoenix, both phoenixes are evil. The checkerboard pattern of the Freemasons in the Vatican, it's all evil because it's a tool for manipulation. It's a tool of deception. It's a tool of exploitation. It's a tool of confusion, right? If in the cancer, in the promoting the cancer, which I started out talking about and I got distracted in the previous video, in the promotion of cancer and providing the solution for cancer, the cancer's real. The solution is real, but it's all evil because the people who are providing the solution are also the people that created the crisis. They own it all, and that's what the checkerboard pattern is. It's like we own the board. We own the board. We own the players. We own it all. We promote the crisis. We provide the solution, and like a sculpture that molds clay into whatever form. We mold the situation. We mold the culture. We mold the population into whatever form we want by controlling both sides, right? By controlling both sides. It's kind of like there's another manifestation of this dualism, of this illicit use of dualism. In what I think it's Napoleon. It's a quote from Napoleon, who said, "Consider what motivates a man: threat and reward." Right? Now, if you don't think about that, you don't really know what it means. If you hear it and you memorize it, and then you don't sit and think about it, you don't really understand. You just think it's a nice little quote. It's just another war philosopher quote. And there's lots of war philosopher quotes. You know, Sun Tzu is probably the most famous. You know, but there's a lot of them. There's from medieval Europe, and I mean from everywhere basically. Probably the Aztec kings have quotes, and we just don't know about them because for whatever reason. I mean, but what that means is, okay, it means a few things. And that's the thing also that I wish that we could all wrap our heads around. It is that when we ask the question, why is something that way, of a situation that is really grand, you know, of a situation that is vast in scale, when we ask the question why, we should not expect a simple answer, because the true answer is never just one simple thing. It's never just like one explanation. It's like, there's never just one reason. There's usually like 5 or 10 reasons, because when you're moving something really big, everything you do by requirement is required to have a multitude of advantages, you know? Well, it's, you know, so you say, well, it's because of this, and it's also because of this, and it's also because of this, and it's also because of this, and yes, it is have this disadvantage, but we've, determined that one disadvantage is offset by these 3 advantages, you know, and that's why we go. We're not 100% sure this is the right thing to do, but it's our best choice at the moment. So that's the way these decisions are. It's not like going to the grocery store and finding the best price on butter. I mean, it's not quite that simple, right? And even when you start drilling down into quote-unquote simple tasks, even simple tasks are not as simple as they appear on the surface. But when you're talking about, you know, things that involve mass numbers of people and players and, geographic dynamics and, you know, all kinds of stuff, you're working in the realm of art as opposed to science. It's not like simplistic, oh, it's because of this. No, there's a bunch of reasons, you know, and a decision was probably made on the basis of consensus, or maybe if it's like the EU, you know, the EU is run by this Nazi drunk that has a propensity to sexually assault women in public right in front of the camera because he just doesn't care. I mean, he's like heir to the richest Nazi fortune next to the most power. His grandfather was the most powerful Nazi next to Adolf Hitler. Let's put it that way. This guy's name is Jean-Claude Juncker, right? So, and the EU was a Nazi-envisioned, Nazi-founded organization. I mean, the whole thing is just Nazi from top to bottom, but it's like this grand, you know, hyper-respected organization. But it's just laughable, you know. So there is the possibility that the answer to the question why, in addition to the possibility that there's a bunch of reasons, there is also the possibility that there is no reason. It's just the one guy at the top. It's a hierarchical structure, and everybody does what that one guy says. You know, and he's a drunk, and he woke up one day and he just decided that's what we're going to do. You know, there is also the possibility that that's the explanation. So in either case, it's not a simple answer, right? I mean, because how can you tell somebody simply that, you know, well, the drunk guy, you know, in the room down the hall decided to do it that way, you know? So anyway, I got to do something here.